Welcome to Noir Street.
Tell me, which part of the world are you watching from?
Chapter 1. The Warm Chair After Closing Rain on West 35th. Street does not fall so much as conduct business. It takes the pavement by contract, collects the shine, and delivers the receipts to every pair of shoes that tries to cross it. The city was wet, busy, and faintly resentful, which is the way it prefers to be. Inside the old brownstone, things were as they should be. The front room held its habitual smell of good wood, old books, and a faint suggestion that if you raised your voice, you would be charged for it. Fritz had been at work on dinner since mid-afternoon, and the air carried one of those promises that make a man willing to be virtuous until at least dessert. Upstairs, the orchids were having their own private weather, tended by a man who talked to them the way other people talk to pets, sweethearts, or bank managers. Wolf was in his chair, of course. You do not say Nero Wolf sat, the way you say it about ordinary citizens, as if it were a casual arrangement between man and furniture. Wolf occupied his chair the way a king occupies a country, by right and by obvious fitness. He had the evening paper open, though his eyes were not on it. When Wolf is thinking, the paper becomes a shield. It keeps other people from guessing how much they are about to be charged. I was in my own chair with a memorandum pad, trying to look industrious, without committing to anything that might require movement. That is one of the advantages of working for Wolf. If you can keep him content, the most strenuous part of your day is lifting a fork. The doorbell rang. Wolf's eyes moved, not to the door, but to me. He does not believe in bells as an instrument to summon him. They are designed to summon Archie Goodwin. I got up, went to the hall, and opened the door. The man on the stoop looked as if he had been introduced to too many bright lights. His hat was a respectable black that had given up trying to be dry. His coat was too thin for the weather and too clean for his expression. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "That depends on whether you are selling anything." "I am not. I am looking for Mr. Wolf. You found him by finding me. Come in." He stepped into the hall, glanced around with a kind of cautious relief, and followed me into the office. Wolf lowered the paper a fraction, enough to reveal his eyes and his displeasure at the interruption. The visitor offered a hand to me first. "Archie Goodwin," I said, "because it saves time." He turned to Wolf, and his hand hovered as if uncertain whether Wolf believed in handshakes. Wolf did not assist him in his doubts. "My name is Dr. Hal Berin," he said, and there was a dentist's briskness in the way he said it, the tone of a man who had spent years delivering bad news with a polite smile. "I was given your name by a patient." Wolf's eyes narrowed slightly. He does not approve of being given as if he were a fruitcake. "A patient?" Wolf said. "I have no interest in your practice." "It is not my practice," Berin said quickly. "It is my office. Something is happening there after closing." "Something," Wolf repeated, as if the word were a small pebble he meant to examine for flaws. I offered the visitor a chair, one of the red leather ones that look comfortable until you notice how far they are from Wolf. He sat on the edge, the way a man sits when he fears the chair will accuse him. Wolf asked, "What do you wish, sir?" Dr. Berin drew a breath and let it out. "I wish to know if I am losing my mind, or if someone is entering my office at night." Wolf said nothing, I said. "If you are losing your mind, we charge extra." Berin looked at me without amusement. "I close my practice at 6. I lock the front door. I set the alarm. I leave. No one remains. Not my assistant. Not the cleaner. Not even the mice. If there are any, I return in the morning. Things are wrong." "How wrong?" Wolf asked. "Small," Berin admitted. "Too small to be ordinary theft. The drills are not stolen. The instruments are not missing. They are shifted, aligned. Neater than my assistant leaves them. My supply drawer is closed in a different way. A tray is set out. It looks like someone prepared to work." Wolf's eyes held him. "And the chair?" Berin swallowed. "The examination chair. I have checked this more than once. I come in late sometimes to review files. Around midnight, I have found it warm. I blinked once, which is about as much disbelief as I allow myself in the office. Warm like someone sat in it. Warm like someone sat in it and just got up, he said. And the irritation in his voice sounded real. The kind a man feels when he realizes how foolish he must sound. I put my hand on the upholstery. It is warm, as if a body had been there. Wolf's lips moved slightly. That was not a smile. If Wolf ever smiled at midnight warmth, it would be because he had discovered a rare orchid that did it. Doctor, Wolf said, a chair does not warm itself at midnight from sentiment. Neither do instruments align themselves from pride in cleanliness. You are implying a trespass. Yes, Berin said, but there is no sign of forced entry. The alarm does not sound. The lock is intact. The windows are secure, and I have not told the police because they will laugh. And because, he added with a careful honesty, I have a reputation. That is refreshing, I said. Most people who come in here have a reputation they think we can improve. Berin's jaw tightened. My office is on Riddle Street. That got my attention. Riddle Street is not one of those places you take your mother to see the holiday decorations. It is a strip of old buildings where the storefronts change hands like playing cards, and the same problems keep getting dealt to new people. It has a way of turning impossible into unpaid invoice, and it charges interest. Wolf said, I am familiar with the street. Continue. Berin leaned forward. Last week I found a tray set out with cotton rolls, a syringe, and the little mirror. I was certain I had not left it that way. 2 nights later, I returned after dinner because I could not shake the feeling. I opened the door myself with my key. The alarm was off. You forget to set it, I suggested. I did not. I tested it. I watched the light. Wolf's eyes were steady, and then, I went into the treatment room, he said. The chair was slightly reclined. The overhead lamp was angled, and the chair was warm. Warm, Mr. Wolf. I stood there, and I could smell the faint odor of clove oil, as if someone had been using it. I looked at Wolf. He hates 2 things with equal sincerity, inefficiency and melodrama. Berin was not being melodramatic. He was being frightened, which is more persuasive. Wolf said, You are a medical man. You could test this warmth. You could measure it. I did, Berin said quickly. I brought a small thermometer. I am not an idiot. The surface temperature was higher than the room by several degrees. Not much, but enough to be recent. Wolf's eyes flicked to me. Goodwin. That is my cue to become practical. All right, doctor, let us get the usual clutter out of the way. Who has keys? Myself. My assistant, Miss Kai Larkin, the building manager, has a master key for the front, but not for my interior door. The cleaner comes twice a week and is escorted by the manager. Any neighbors? I asked. Who might be interested in dentistry after hours? Berin hesitated. Next door is a pawn shop. Across the street is a small law office that closes early. Above me is an empty loft, or it was empty. Recently, someone has been working in it, I think. I hear footsteps sometimes. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Who? I do not know, Berin admitted. The building manager said a man rented it. Name not given. I said, And your assistant, Miss Larkin, what is she like? Berin looked offended. Competent. That is not a description, I told him. That is an endorsement. He exhaled. She is young, 28. Efficient. She has been with me a year. She has a key because she opens in the morning. And does she ever stay late? Wolf asked. Sometimes to finish notes. And does she have a boyfriend? I asked. Who likes to play with dental instruments as a hobby? Berin's ears reddened. I do not discuss her personal life. Then you will pay more, Wolf said mildly. That was Wolf being generous. He could have said it less mildly. Berin swallowed his pride. She sees someone. I do not know his name. She does not bring him to the office. Do you have narcotics? I asked. A small amount local anesthetics, they are accounted for. Wolf's gaze stayed on Berin as if he were reading a chart. Doctor, you have omitted an element. Money. Why would someone enter your office at night to align instruments? Is there something else? Berin's eyes dropped to his hands. When a man looks at his hands, it is usually because they are the only parts of him that are not lying. There is a safe, he said quietly. Wolf said, of course. It holds patient records, Berin said, then corrected himself with effort. It holds certain records, sensitive ones. And also, he added, some cash, not much, receipts before deposit. Has the safe been disturbed? I asked. Number not that I can tell. Then perhaps, Wolf said. The trespasser is not interested in cash. Berin looked up, and his face had a kind of reluctant confession on it. A month ago, a man came to me. He was not a patient. He wanted me to provide a statement. Something about dental work to support an insurance claim. I refused. He was angry. Wolf's eyes sharpened. Name. I did not take it, Berin said. He was tall. Scar above the left eyebrow. He spoke well, but there was something off. He knew too much about my practice, about my hours. That was better. Scar above the left eyebrow is more useful than warm chair, at least to a man like me, Wolf said. And now you think he comes at night to intimidate you? I do not know, Berin said. I only know something is wrong. It feels like a message. Wolf stared at him for a long moment. In that silence I could hear the house settle, the faint tick of the clock, and the distant city traffic, the wet hiss of tires on pavement. Finally Wolf spoke. Doctor, you have come here because you desire certainty. You may obtain it, but not without cost. My fee is not modest. My time is not elastic. I do not go to Riddle Street at midnight. I did not expect you to, Berin said quickly, and his relief was so obvious it nearly made me laugh. I expected Mr. Goodwin too. Wolf's eyes shifted to me, and that was as close as he gets to affection. Indeed, Wolf said. Goodwin will go. He will observe. He will inquire. He will report. If the circumstances require my attention, I will decide. Berin opened his wallet with hands that had steadied, the way a man's hands steady when he is finally doing something he can measure. He produced a checkbook, Wolf said. $2,000 as a retainer. Berin's eyes widened, but he did not argue. Fear makes bargains quicker than friendship. When he had written the check and left it on the desk, I escorted him back to the hall. At the door, he paused. Mr. Goodwin, he said softly, I do not believe in ghosts. I do, I told him. I believe in them the way I believe in elevator music. Somebody put it there on purpose. He gave a faint, tight nod and went out into the rain. I returned to the office. Wolf had already slid the check into the drawer, as if it were an unpleasant detail he tolerated, because it paid for orchids and cooks. I sat down and said, all right, midnight warmth, neat trays, a scarred gentleman with insurance dreams. Riddle Street. If this is a joke, it is one of the expensive ones. Wolf's fingers steepled. A warm chair is not a joke. It is either a fact or an illusion, or a thermostat with ambition. Wolf ignored that. He is strong that way. If it is a fact, then someone was in that room recently. The question is not whether, the question is why. A man who enters a place repeatedly without stealing anything obvious is there for a purpose. That is a cheerful list. It is accurate, Wolf said. You will go tonight, not at midnight. Earlier, you will meet the assistant. You will examine the arrangements. You will ascertain the building manager's habits, and you will pay attention to what you smell. I raised my brows. Now I am a bloodhound. You are my eyes, Wolf said, and occasionally my nose, since you insist on using it for sarcasm. What about dinner? Fritz is making something that has been advertising itself for hours. Wolf's eyes flicked toward the dining room door as if he could see through it. You will eat, then you will go. That is Wolf in a nutshell. He respects meals like rituals and cases like chess. If he could solve a murder with a menu, he would. At dinner, Fritz served a roast that made the rain outside seem like a distant rumor. Wolf ate with the serenity of a man whose pleasures are scheduled and obeyed. I ate with the haste of a man who knew he would be spending his evening in a dentist's office on Riddle Street, trying not to sit in a chair that might be warm for reasons I did not want to know. When we were back in the office, Wolf lit a cigar and settled deeper into his chair. I stood, pulled on my coat, and said, "If I do not come back, water the orchids." Wolf's eyes did not even move. "If you do not come back, Goodwin, I will hire another assistant. The orchids will endure." "Comforting," I said, and headed for the door. Outside, New York was still wet, still busy, still conducting business. I hailed a cab and gave the address. As we drove south and then east, the city changed its face the way it changes its mind. Block by block, lights shifted, buildings aged, and the rain made every window look like it was hiding something. Riddle Street greeted us with its usual charm, which is to say it did not greet us at all. It simply waited. I paid the driver, stepped out, and looked up at the building where Dr. Hal Berin repaired teeth, and worried about warm chairs. The entrance was narrow, the kind of doorway that makes you feel you are entering a secret you did not ask for. I checked my watch. It was not midnight yet, but something told me the chair would not need much time. Chapter 2. Pipes that whisper with no water if you want to learn humility. Spend a night alone in a professional office, with the lights down and the city outside, pretending it has no interest in you. A place that looks harmless at 10 in the morning can turn theatrical at 1 in the morning, when every chair seems to hold a grudge and every shadow looks like it is trying to earn overtime. Dr. Hal Berin's dental office did not have much in the way of atmosphere. It had utility, antiseptic, and the lingering sweetness of clove oil that makes you think of pain served politely. The waiting room had 3 chairs, a low table with 6-month-old magazines, and a potted plant that had been watered only when someone felt guilty. The treatment room held the chair, the lamp, and trays of instruments laid out with the strict neatness of a man who believes disorder is immoral. At 8 o'clock, Kaya Larkin had let me in, walked me through, and left with the brisk composure of someone who does not want to be alone in that building after dark. She was efficient, quick, and tight-lipped, but not stupid. Stupid people do not survive Riddle Street, not unless they marry money or become landlords. Before she left, she pointed at the alarm panel and said, "If it beeps, do not touch it. Call the number on the sticker." "I never touch anything that beeps," I told her. "It encourages them." The front door clicked shut and the deadbolt slid home. A moment later, I heard her footsteps going down the stairwell, each step quick and determined, like she was racing a thought. After that, the office belonged to me, the chair, and whatever had been warming it for Dr. Berin. I did not just sit down and wait for my imagination to start selling me ghosts. I walked the rooms, checked the windows, checked the back door, checked the supply closet, checked the safe behind the framed diploma in Berin's office. I am not a lock expert, but I know the difference between a door that is closed and a door that has been persuaded. I also found the main water valve under the sink in the sterilization room. It was a rusty handle with enough resistance to make a man nostalgic for new buildings. I shut it as tight as I could, not because I thought a phantom dentist needed plumbing, but because Wolf had told me to observe, and I like to give a case fewer places to hide. By midnight I had eaten one of Fritz's sandwiches and regretted it, because Fritz makes sandwiches that deserve a witness. I sat in the treatment room with a paperback, my chair angled so I could see the front door and the short hall to Berin's private office. I kept the lamp on low. Too much light makes you careless. Too little makes you stupid. The building itself did not help. It was old and built the way old buildings are built, with pipes and beams that complain softly when the temperature changes. Now and then a distant truck passed, and the windows gave a faint rattle, as if they wanted to remind me they were only pretending to be secure. Above me, in the loft, something creaked, occasionally, the way an empty place creaks when it is not empty, or when it is settling into its own lies. At 12:47, the sound started. It was water running through a wall, not a drip, not a hiss, not the faint cough of an old radiator. It was a steady rush, confident, and smooth, like a faucet turned fully on and forgotten. I lowered my book and listened. The sound did not belong. I had shut the main valve. Unless the building had an alternate feed, there should have been no water. Not here, not anywhere above. I rose carefully and moved to the sterilization room. The light in there was off, but the faint glow from the hall was enough for me to find the sink. The running sound came from behind the plaster, deep in the wall, and it had a peculiar quality. It was too even. Real water in old pipes has a personality. It gurgles, it changes pressure, it argues with air pockets. This sound was smooth as a recording. I turned on my flashlight and aimed it into the sink dry. The basin looked as if it had not seen a drop in hours. I ran my finger along the bottom and felt dust. Not damp. The faucet was firmly off. No trickle, no wetness around the rim, but the pipes hummed. I crouched and put my hand on the metal under the sink. It vibrated. The sound called itself water, but it was too even, too controlled. I reached to the valve and tested it, still shut hard, closed. I tried to turn it further and could not. That was that. I opened it a fraction, just a fraction, for a test. The sound changed slightly, a hair higher in pitch, then settled. That was the first honest thing it had done. It told me it was connected to the plumbing system somehow. I shut the valve again. The rush continued, unchanged, as if my action had been beneath its notice. Then I heard a creak above, sharper than the building's ordinary complaints. A footstep, careful and slow. I froze, my hand still on the pipe. Another footstep. The loft above me was not as empty as the building manager claimed, or else the building had decided to practice walking. I stepped back into the treatment room, killed the lamp, and stood in the doorway with the darkness on my side. The running sound kept whispering behind the wall. The upstairs footfalls continued. Measured, like someone pacing to a plan, I counted breaths. I listened for a door. I listened for the stairwell. No stairwell sound. No entry sound. Just those footsteps above. Then a pause. It was hard not to picture a man up there holding a flashlight and smiling at his own cleverness. I moved to the rear stairwell door and put my ear to it. The stairwell was quiet. I opened the door a crack and looked out. The narrow stairwell rose to the loft. Door above. The bulb overhead flickered and steadied, as if it had considered failing and decided not to. The loft door was closed. Nothing moved. I shut the stairwell door quietly, went back to the sterilization room, and listened again to the pipes. The sound continued. It went on and on, as calm and deliberate as a metronome. I decided to learn something concrete. I went into Berin's office, opened his filing cabinet, and found a folder labeled Maintenance. Inside were invoices and receipts. The kind men keep to prove they are responsible. One invoice caught my eye. Plumbing work, 2nd floor, 6 months ago. The company name was Riddle Maintenance and Supply. The signature at the bottom was H. Sallow. That was a name with the feel of damp wallpaper. I tucked the invoice back, but not before noting the date and the vague description. Install additional line, test pressure. Additional line to where? For what? The invoice did not say. It rarely does. The invoice's job is to look innocent. At 1 o'clock precisely, the running sound stopped clean, like someone threw a switch. The quiet afterward was too sudden to be plumbing. In the quiet, the building settled with a faint groan, then held still, as if it were listening for my reaction. I went back to the treatment room and checked the chair. It had been upright when I started my watch. I am sure of it because I had tested it, moved it, and left it as a point of reference. Now, it was reclined. Not much. Just enough that a man could have sat, leaned back, and risen. The overhead lamp was angled slightly toward the headrest, as if someone had adjusted it by habit. I stepped closer and put my hand on the upholstery. Warm, not warm like a heater, warm like a body. The kind of warmth that makes you aware you are touching something someone else has just left. My skin tightened. On the tray beside the chair sat a single cotton roll, white and clean, placed as neatly as a calling card. It had not been there earlier. I knew that because I had looked, and because I am a cautious man with a fragile sense of confidence. I did not touch it. Wolf had told me to preserve any object placed, and I can follow instructions when the instructions are sensible, and I am not hungry. I pulled a pair of latex gloves from a drawer, put them on, and slid the cotton roll into a small paper envelope I found in the desk. I labeled it with the time and the room. It felt ridiculous, but so did a chair that warmed itself on a schedule. Then I heard another creak above, closer this time, like someone had stepped nearer the stairwell door in the loft. I went to the rear stairwell again, opened the door wider, and aimed my flashlight up. The loft door was still closed, but now I could see something else. A faint line of light under the loft door, thin as a knife edge. Someone up there had a light on, or a crack in the wall had learned a new trick. I stood still and listened. A soft scrape, not a footstep, more like a chair leg moved, or a box dragged. Then silence. No one came down. No one opened the loft door. The line of light remained. Steady. Whatever this was, it was not a drunk who had wandered into the wrong building. It was controlled. It was planned. It was a man who wanted Dr. Berin to doubt his own senses and wanted the building to participate. I shut the stairwell door, returned to the treatment room, and sat where I could watch both the front door and the hall. My heart had stopped trying to act brave and started acting smart. At 1:15, the running sound began again, fainter this time, as if it were farther away, or as if it wanted to suggest it was real water after all. Then the building above creaked once, in the same measured way. That was enough. I went to the phone, dialed West 35th, and listened to the ring. Wolf answered on the second ring, his voice thick with irritation at the hour, but not with sleep. Wolf can be awake at any time if a problem is interesting enough. Yes, he said. It's me, I told him. We have pipes that run with no water, a chair that is warm on schedule, a cotton roll planted like a signature, and someone in the loft above who walks carefully and uses light. Wolf did not speak for a moment. When he did, his voice was controlled, which is the tone he uses when he is about to spend money or ruin someone's night. We're port precisely, he said. I did. When I finished, Wolf said, do not leave. Do not confront anyone. Preserve the cotton roll and the times you observed. The sound in the pipes is an instrument, not an accident. The man above is either the performer or the audience. That is comforting. It is correct, Wolf said. Goodwin, the objective is fear. Fear is rarely an end in itself. It is a lever. We will identify what it is meant to move. You want me to keep watching? Yes. And if the chair is warm again, determine whether it is warmed by contact or by artifice. Do so without exposing yourself. I stared at the chair, at the angled lamp, at the neat tray that now felt like a stage. I will do my best, I said. I expect competence, Wolf replied, not bravery. He hung up. I sat back down in the darkened treatment room and listened to the building breathe. Outside, Riddle Street remained quiet, as if it was saving its noise for daylight, when it could pretend it was honest business. Inside, the office waited. Upstairs, the loft waited too, and the pipes, even silent, felt as if they were ready to whisper again, not with water, but with whatever secret someone wanted Dr. Berin to hear. Chapter 3. Gas in the dark morning in New York does not tiptoe in with bird song and goodwill. It comes in with horns, headlines, and the smell of yesterday's rain turning sour on the curb. When I left Riddle Street after sunrise, my collar felt like it had been laminated by grime, and my patience had the texture of sandpaper. I got back to the brownstone a little after 7. Fritz met me in the hall with a look that suggested he had been awake since the first potato considered becoming breakfast. Coffee, Archie, he asked. I love you, I told him, and meant it. I carried the paper envelope with the cotton roll into the office and set it on Wolf's desk. Wolf was not in his office yet. He was upstairs with the orchids, where the air is filtered, the light is controlled, and nothing unexpected is permitted to breathe without approval. When Wolf came down at 9, he looked as he always looks after 2 hours with his plants, calmer, broader, and more certain that the world exists to support his preferences. He took his seat, accepted a cup of coffee, and regarded me. You remained, he said. I remained, I agreed. The pipes performed their little trick twice. The chair warmed itself once. The cotton roll sat where it wanted to be seen. The loft above had light under the door and footsteps on schedule. Nobody came down. Nobody forced a lock. Nobody tripped the alarm. And that is the cotton roll. Yes, bagged like evidence. I feel like a Boy Scout. Wolf grunted, which is his version of praise. He opened the envelope without touching the contents, held it near his nose, then set it down. Clove oil, he said. Strong. Not surprising. I leaned forward. You think it matters? Everything matters, Wolf replied. The question is sequence. Did the cotton roll appear before or after the chair was warmed? After, I said. Or at least, I saw it after. Wolf nodded once, then reached for his newspaper. He had barely opened it when the doorbell rang. He got up, because that is what I do. At the door was a man in a rumpled coat, with a square jaw, a hard mouth, and a fedora that had seen better years. Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins of Homicide, who walks into Wolf's house with the air of a man entering a courtroom where he expects the judge to be unreasonable. Morning, Stebbins said, and it sounded like a complaint. Wolf in, he is, and so is his mood, I told him. Come in. Stebbins stepped into the office, saw Wolf, and nodded without warmth. Morning. Wolf. Sergeant. Wolf said, without looking up from the paper. You are early. Either you have become diligent, or something has occurred. Stebbins's eyes flicked to me. Something occurred. Your dentist is dead. I felt my stomach drop in a neat, efficient way, like an elevator cable snapping without fuss. I had been in Berrin's office less than 3 hours earlier, listening to pipes lie and watching a chair impersonate a confession. Wolf lowered the paper. His face did not change much. Wolf does not waste expressions. Dr. Hal Berrin, Wolf said. Explain. Stebbins pulled a folded sheet from his pocket and slapped it on Wolf's desk. It was a newspaper extra, fresh ink, bold type. The headline did not bother with politeness. Dentist found dead in office, Stebbins said. He was found around 8, slumped near a nitrous tank. They're calling it an accident, gas leak, misused equipment, whatever. I thought you might be interested, since your man was there last night. Wolf's eyes went to me. I left at sunrise, I said. Berrin was alive when I left him at 8 last night. I didn't see him after that. Stebbins's mouth tightened. You didn't see him because you didn't look hard enough. He was in his office when we found him. Door locked from the inside. People lock doors, I said. Some even do it while alive. Stebbins ignored that. The air in the office was sweet. Wrong, you know that smell if you ever had dental work. He was slumped on the floor near the nitrous oxide tank, face slack, no bruises, no blood. The medical boys say it can happen if a man gets careless. Tank valve open, mask or line misused. He passes out and keeps breathing it. And the office was tidy, I said. Stebbins blinked. What? Accidents don't tidy up afterward, I told him. A man passes out by mistake. He usually doesn't leave his tools arranged like a display. The place I sat in last night had a chair reclined just enough to be used and a lamp angled by habit. Someone is playing dentist. Wolf's eyes narrowed slightly, which for him is a frown with a college education. Stebbins said, You got a theory, Goodwin. I've got suspicion, I said. Theory comes after breakfast. Wolf said, Sergeant, why are you here? Stebbins' jaw worked. Because Inspector Kramer wants to know why you were sniffing around a dental office on Riddle Street the night before the dentist turns up dead. And because the manager says you were in the building, and the assistant says you were hired. And because, he added, with reluctant honesty, you have a way of being involved. Wolf's lips tightened. I am involved because Dr. Berrin retained me. The implication that my employee caused his death is absurd. Stebbins gave a short, humorless sound. We're not saying Goodwin killed him. Not yet. We're saying your timing stinks. Wolf's eyes were steady. Your timing is irrelevant. What is relevant is whether Dr. Beren's death was accidental. Stebbins shrugged. Looks accidental. Wolf leaned back a fraction, hands on the chair arms as if he were anchoring the room. Sergeant, you and I have both seen accidents. They are chaotic. They are wasteful. They do not leave a room in a condition that suggests deliberate preparation, Stebbins said. The place was neat, because dentists are neat. I shook my head. Not that neat. Last night the tray was set like someone expected a patient. This morning you're telling me he's slumped by the nitrous tank. Did anyone notice whether a tray was set out? Stebbins's eyes narrowed. I didn't inventory cotton rolls, if that's what you mean. Wolf said. Did you find the main water valve closed? Stebbins stared. What water valve? Wolf's gaze did not move. Answer the question. Stebbins shifted, irritated. I don't know. You want to play plumber? Go down there. Wolf's voice sharpened slightly. I want to play intellect. You may tell Inspector Kramer that I will require access to the premises and the police report. And you may tell him that if he insists on calling it an accident without examining the implications, he will be mistaken. Stebbins's face reddened. You telling Kramer how to do his job? I am telling you how to do yours, Wolf said. Since you are here. Stebbins glared at Wolf. Then at me. Kramer will want to see you. Goodwin, he'll likely come himself. Keep your schedule open. I always do, I said. It's part of my charm. Stebbins turned and went out. The door shut behind him with the soft finality of a judge ending a hearing. I looked at Wolf. Well, that escalated. Wolf's eyes went to the newspaper extra, then to the cotton roll envelope. It is consistent, he said. Consistent with what? I asked. A man who likes dentistry so much he practices it on furniture. Wolf's mouth tightened, consistent with intimidation that failed. Dr. Beren sought certainty. He sought protection. The party responsible could not permit that. I felt a cold place in my chest. You think he was killed to shut him up? I think he was killed to redirect attention, Wolf said. A staged accident is a convenient tombstone. It suggests negligence. It discourages inquiry. It also has a secondary effect. It warns anyone else who might speak. I rubbed my jaw. Kay Larkin. Yes, Wolf said. And the building manager, Sallow, and the unknown occupant of the loft. I reached for my notebook. You want me back down there? Of course, Wolf said. But not to wander. You will go with purpose. You will observe the scene as it stands now, and you will speak to the persons involved. You will be courteous. You will be cautious. You will not be arrested. I snorted. That last one depends on Kramer's mood. Wolf looked at me the way he looks at a man who tries to barter with arithmetic. Kramer is not stupid. He will not obstruct me if he believes I can deliver him a murderer, and I will. I hesitated, then said, Last night felt like rehearsal, like someone practicing movements in the treatment room, adjusting the lamp, reclining the chair, planting the cotton roll, running the pipe sound to make the place seem haunted. Now the dentist is dead by gas in the same building. That's not coincidence. That's choreography. Wolf's eyes sharpened. Exactly. A killer uses the room the way a pianist uses keys, without looking habit. Familiarity, certainty. Whoever arranged that chair last night has used it before or has studied it closely. I swallowed. Which means the killer had access. Wolf nodded. Access is not the same as opportunity, but it is the beginning of truth. The phone rang, I answered, because Wolf was watching me. It was Inspector Kramer, and his voice sounded like he had already enjoyed a bad morning and was eager to share it. Goodwin, he said, you and Wolf are in the middle of this, whether you like it or not. I'm coming over. Bring your sunshine, I told him. It brightens the room. He hung up. I put the receiver down and looked at Wolf, Kramer inbound. Wolf's expression did not change. Then we will proceed efficiently. Goodwin, when Kramer arrives, you will provide him with an accurate account of your observations last night. Do not embellish. Do not attempt humor. That's like asking me to stop breathing. Then breathe quietly, Wolf said. Afterward, you will go to Riddle Street with the police. You will view the scene. You will speak to Miss Larkin and Mr. Sallow. You will inquire about the loft occupant. You will obtain the invoice you mentioned. I noted it, I said. Riddle Maintenance and Supply. Signed H. Sallow Plumbing Work. Additional line. Wolf's eyes held mine. A line installed 6 months ago. A sound produced last night. A death caused by gas this morning. These are not separate occurrences. They are steps in one design. The idea of a design made my skin crawl, because design implies a man with patience. And patience is what kills people who think they are safe. Kramer arrived 10 minutes later, bringing his bulk, his cigar, and the scent of wet wool. He planted himself in the red leather chair, as if he were claiming it for the city. He looked at Wolf. All right, Wolf. I got a dead dentist, a sweet stink of gas, and your boy playing night watchman in the same building. You want to explain? Wolf folded his hands. Certainly, the explanation is simple. Dr. Berin was murdered. Kramer's eyes narrowed. You got proof? Wolf's voice stayed calm. Not yet, but we have reason. That is how intelligence functions, Inspector. It begins with reason and proceeds to proof. You are invited to keep pace. Kramer grunted. We'll see, Goodwin. You're coming with us. I stood up and reached for my coat. I was planning to, Inspector. I like visiting places where chairs remember people. Kramer stared at me. What the hell does that mean? It means, Wolf said, before I could enjoy it, that last night Goodwin observed indications of unauthorized access. Those indications are now relevant. You will listen. And in that moment, as Wolf began laying out my observations with his usual precision, I realized something else. Whoever had been playing with pipes and chairs had been close enough to touch everything, and clever enough to leave just enough behind to make a sane man doubt himself. Now the dentist was dead, and the room had been used like an instrument. Chapter 4. Wolf studies the spittoon if you ever want to see the difference between authority and importance. Watch Inspector Kramer in the presence of Nero Wolf. Kramer has authority. It is issued with a badge and backed by statutes and an office that smells of stale cigars. Wolf has importance, which is not issued by anyone and therefore cannot be revoked. We went to Riddle Street in 2 cars. Kramer rode with me because he likes to keep suspects close. And in his mind, I qualify whenever I breathe near a corpse. Wolf came in a separate taxi, because Wolf does not ride in police cars unless he is unconscious, and even then he would probably complain. The building looked worse in daylight. Night had at least the courtesy to hide cracks and stains. Morning showed them all, and the street had that tired look it gets after the rain washes. Nothing clean. The used radio shop downstairs was open, its door propped wide. A man inside tinkering with a chassis, like he was trying to reassemble hope with a screwdriver. We climbed the narrow stairs. The air smelled of damp plaster and old paint. At the second-floor landing, 2 uniforms stood guard like stagehands. Inside the dental office, the lights were bright and merciless. The waiting room chairs were the same, but now they looked guilty, as if they had seen too much and wished they had been upholstered in innocence. The treatment room was neat, and that was the first wrong thing. The police had their usual appetite for the dramatic. There was chalk on the floor near the hall, camera flashes still echoing in the air, and a couple of men in plain clothes standing by Berin's private office doorway, as if the dead man might step out and demand a refund. Kramer walked in with his cigar clenched and his face set. He nodded at the men, then at the room. Wolf, he said as Wolf entered. This is the scene. Try not to rearrange anything. Wolf came in like a judge entering a courtroom, slow, certain, and unimpressed. He wore his dark suit, as if it were armor, and his hat remained on his head, a fraction longer than etiquette requires, which is Wolf's way of informing the room that etiquette is negotiable. He did not look at the body. He did not look at the photos the police were passing around, those glossy little souvenirs of misery. He did not study the nitrous tank or the mask line draped like a careless scarf. He ignored the dramatic clutter that police admire because it looks like progress. Instead, he stood in the treatment room doorway and let his eyes travel over the chair. The overhead lamp, the tray stands, the sink area, and the small spittoon cup mounted beside the chair. He said, "Goodwin." I stepped closer. "Yes, sir. Describe precisely what you observed last night." I gave it to him again, clean and straight, the running water sound with the main valve shut, the footfalls above. The chair reclined and warmed, the lamp angle, the cotton roll placed. The line of light under the loft door. Wolf listened without comment, his eyes moving now and then, not to the big items but to small ones. He watched the spittoon cup the way a man watches a witness who is not aware he is testifying. When I finished, Wolf said to Kramer, "Inspector, where exactly was Dr. Berin found?" Kramer jerked his head toward the private office. "In there, slumped near the nitrous tank, door locked, no signs of a struggle." Wolf nodded once, as if Kramer had confirmed a minor detail about the weather. He walked past the office doorway without entering. "I am aware," Wolf said. "I am also aware that corpses are not conversational." Kramer grunted. "You got a point. Make it." Wolf moved to the chair and stood beside it. He did not touch it. Wolf touches objects only when he must. And then, with the air of a man forced to shake hands with a stranger, he looked at the spittoon cup. It was a small porcelain thing, white and clean, attached to a short pipe and drain. Dentists like them because they allow a man to spit without dignity. A small amount of water normally runs through them to keep them from becoming a museum. Wolf said, "Goodwin, the spittoon cup." Kramer stared. "The what?" "The spittoon cup," Wolf repeated patiently, "which is rare for him. And the drain trap beneath it." "One of the plainclothes," men said. "That's not relevant. The death was in the office." Wolf turned his head an inch. "Everything in this suite is relevant, since the murderer used it." Kramer's cheeks puffed slightly. "What are you looking for?" Wolf, tooth spit. Wolf ignored him. Sergeant Stebbins. Stebbins, who had been hovering with the attitude of a man waiting for trouble to pay him overtime, stepped forward. "Yeah, I require the drain trap beneath that spittoon," Wolf said. "Removed and brought to me now." Stebbins blinked. "You want me to call a plumber?" "I want you," Wolf said, "to apply the simple skills required to loosen a fitting. If your hands are too delicate, Inspector Kramer may assist you." Kramer made a sound like a cigar being crushed. "I don't loosen fittings." "Then loosen your mind," Wolf said. Stebbins muttered under his breath, but went to fetch a tool kit from the maintenance closet. Kai Larkin appeared in the hall then, pale and tight, her eyes red but dry. She looked at me first, then at Wolf. "Mr. Wolf," she said, and her voice held more steadiness than I expected. Wolf gave her the barest nod. "Miss Larkin, you discovered the body?" "Yes," she said. "I came in to open. The door was locked from inside. I called Mr. Sallow. He came with the master key for the outer door and we forced the inner. Then we found him." "Where is Mr. Sallow?" Wolf asked. "In the hall," she said. "The police told him to stay there." Wolf's eyes held her. "Did you touch anything in this room this morning?" "No," she said quickly. "I did not. I only went into the office and saw him. I did not even touch the tank." Wolf nodded, satisfied with the promptness of her answer. "Did Dr. Berin ever use the spittoon cup for anything other than its purpose?" She frowned. "Number, it is just the spittoon. Does it drain properly?" Wolf asked. "Yes," she said. "I clean it every day. The trap was replaced last year." "Mr. Sallow arranged it," she said, then caught herself as if realizing the name might matter. "He hires the building maintenance." Wolf nodded again, and I could almost see a small gear click into place behind his eyes. Stebbins returned with a screwdriver and a wrench and crouched beside the chair like a man preparing to commit a small crime. He loosened the fittings under the spittoon and pulled out the drain trap, a curved piece of pipe that holds whatever settles. It dripped once. A thin line of water that smelled faintly of antiseptic. Stebbins held it up with a grimace. "Here," he said, happy, Wolf did not answer. He produced a handkerchief from his pocket, not to protect himself from dirt, but to keep dirt from touching him. He accepted the trap as if it were a legal document. He tilted it carefully over a sheet of paper Kramer's man provided. A small clump fell out, dark and gritty. At first glance, it looked like ordinary residue, the kind you'd expect from spit and paste and whatever else people leave behind when they are being repaired. Then the light caught it. Bright filings fine as pepper, metallic, deliberate. I leaned closer and saw the sparkle, the tiny sharp points, not the dull grey of tooth dust, not the pale crumbs of filling material. This was clean metal, shaved with intent. Kramer leaned in too, interest forced past irritation. What the hell is that? Wolf studied it without touching. Not tooth, he said, not filling, something made, something copied. Stebbins stared. Copied. Wolf's eyes remained on the grit. A person who wished to create a key inspector would require a pattern. A person who wished to create a pattern could use wax, putty, clay, or metal, depending on the lock and the skill. Kramer's face tightened. You're saying somebody made keys in here? I am saying, Wolf replied, that someone used this office to produce something in metal. These filings are not a byproduct of dentistry. They are a byproduct of fabrication. I felt a cold clarity, the running water sound, the chair warmth, the neat trays, the rehearsed movements. All of it had been theater, a diversion, a way to keep attention on the treatment room, while something else happened. Perhaps in the back, perhaps near a door, perhaps near a lock. Wolf looked up at Stebbins. When you removed the trap, did you observe whether the water supply to this spittoon is separate from the main valve under the sterilization sink? Stebbins blinked. I don't know. Wolf's gaze sharpened. Then find out. Trace the line. Kramer blew smoke toward the ceiling. You're off in plumbing again. The man died from gas. Wolf turned slightly to face him. A man does not die from gas in isolation. Inspector, he dies from gas because someone provided the gas, the opportunity, and the concealment. If last night the office was being used for metal work, then the killer was present, active, and unafraid. Kramer's jaw worked. You got a suspect? Wolf's eyes moved toward the hall where Kaya Larkin stood, toward the stairwell door that led up, and toward the waiting room beyond where the building manager waited with his damp name. I have categories, Wolf said. One of them includes people who have access and mechanical skill. Kaya Larkin stiffened. I have no mechanical skill. Wolf's eyes held her briefly. Then you have no reason to fear my attention, Miss Larkin. That did not comfort her, because nothing comforts a woman in a room where a man has just died, and police are asking questions like blunt instruments. Wolf looked at me. Goodwin, you said the loft door had light beneath it. Yes. Wolf nodded. Then we will meet the occupant. Kramer barked a short laugh. You're not going upstairs, Wolf. Wolf's voice stayed even. I am not climbing stairs. Inspector, Goodwin will. You may send an officer if you wish, but I advise subtlety. If the occupant is the craftsman who produced these filings, he will not welcome inquiry. Kramer stared at Wolf, then at the glittering grit on the paper. His expression shifted, grudgingly, from annoyance to interest. All right, he said. Goodwin, take a uniform. Go see who's up there. I glanced at Wolf. He had not moved, but he looked satisfied, as if the room had finally begun to speak in a language he respected. As I headed for the stairwell with a patrolman behind me, I looked once more at the filings, fine as pepper, bright as intent. The killer, Wolf had said, used the room like a pianist uses keys. And now, Wolf had found one of the notes. Chapter 5. The tooth that wasn't a tooth. If you want a police department to move quickly, do not ask for speed. Ask for certainty. Certainty is catnip to men who wear badges, because it lets them file things in the right cabinet and go home without the case following them like a bad smell. The bright filings Wolf had coaxed out of the spittoon trap had given Kramer a new cabinet to worry about. It also gave me a new errand. Within an hour of leaving Riddle Street, I was riding uptown with a patrolman who looked as if he had been assigned to babysit a man suspected of stealing the police commissioner's lunch. Wolf had not come along. He had returned to West 35th, where he could think without having to share air with uniforms. Before he sent me uptown, though, I had done what he asked and taken a uniform up to the loft. We found no tenant waiting under the light, only a work table, a few crates, and a fresh run of tubing dropped through a wall cavity toward Beren's rooms below. The lease on the loft had been signed in the name of Cal Dawn, which was either carelessness or arrogance. Then Wolf sent me with instructions, and Wolf's instructions have the quality of a legal order. He wanted the grit identified, and he wanted it done by someone who could not be impressed by drama. That meant a dental laboratory technician. New York has a whole hidden city of such people, tucked into back rooms where they build crowns and bridges for mouths they will never see. They work with tiny tools, bright lamps, and patience. They also know exactly what material belongs in a tooth and what does not. The lab Wolf chose was on Lexington, in a building that looked too clean for the neighborhood. The sign said Richmond Dental Laboratory in plain letters. Inside, the air smelled of plaster, hot metal, and something sweet that made me think of varnish. The room was bright with bench lamps. Men in smocks bent over work like monks, except monks have more leisure and fewer invoices. A woman met me at the counter. She was in her 40s, hair pinned, glasses on a chain, and eyes that had seen every kind of mistake a dentist can make and still demand a refund for. "Yes," she said. "Archie Goodwin," I told her. "I represent Nero Wolf." That name landed the way a heavy book lands, with a thump and a little dust. Her brows lifted. "The detective. The same we need an opinion on a sample. Your name is—" "Marta Vick," she said. "I run the finishing bench. If it is about tooth work, you can talk to me." I produced the small paper packet Wolf had sent, sealed and labeled. This came from a drain trap in a dental office. She took the packet as if it might bite, opened it, and poured a pinch of the glittering grit onto a black pad under her lamp. It looked even brighter, like a tiny pile of malicious snow. Marta Vick leaned in. Her eyes narrowed, not in suspicion but in concentration. She took a small magnet from a drawer and held it close. Nothing moved. She made a small sound in her throat and reached for a loop, then for a pair of tweezers. She lifted one shaving, rolled it between the points, and watched how it caught the light. "This is not tooth," she said promptly. "I was hoping you would say that," I told her. "It would be disappointing if a man could grind his molars down and leave glitter." She did not smile. She reached for a tiny file, tested the shaving, then nodded once, as if confirming what the metal already knew. "This is nickel silver," she said. I blinked. "You mean silver?" "That is not silver. It is a blend," she replied, patient. The way a person is patient when explaining basic facts to a slow audience. "Copper, nickel, zinc. We use it sometimes for precision parts, clasps, framework. It takes a fine edge. It is not used for molars. It is not used inside a mouth unless you are building something that needs strength and exactness." "Something like a lockpick," I suggested. Her eyes flicked to me. "Or a key." That word did not surprise me. It fit too well. Wolf had called it already, back in the treatment room, with his calm voice and his steady disdain for coincidence. Marta Vick tapped the pile gently with her tweezers. "These filings are fresh. Fine. That means someone worked carefully. Not with a hacksaw. Rotary tool, likely dental handpiece, could do it." "That is what you use," I said. She looked at me as if wondering whether I had escaped from a children's program. "Yes, dental tools can shape metal. That is why we have them. If someone used a dental handpiece to shape nickel, silver, what would they be making?" "A pattern," she said. "A thin blank, a precise piece, something with small cuts, the kind of work you do when you need exact grooves." She lifted her eyes to mine. "Why is a detective asking me this?" "Because a dentist is dead," I said. "And the police would like it to be an accident, because accidents are tidy on paper. But Wolf dislikes tidy accidents." She held still for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then you should tell him this is deliberate. It does not happen by accident. I will, I said. One more thing. If someone shaped this in a dental office after hours, what would they need? Martovic did not hesitate. Light, stability, time, and the right bits. If they did it more than once, they would arrange the bits where their hand expects them. I thanked her, left the lab, and rode back downtown with the patrolman. He said nothing the whole way, which made him either a saint or a man who had decided he was safer not knowing. Back at the brownstone, the air in Wolf's office had the calm it always has, like the room itself has an agreement with chaos. Wolf sat in his chair, a cigar unlit beside him. The morning paper folded neatly, the world waiting for him to judge it. I gave him Martovic's conclusion, verbatim and clean. I also gave him her tone, because Wolf appreciates tone. Tone tells you whether a person is guessing. When I finished, Wolf nodded once. Nickel, silver, very good. Not molars, I added. Not crownwork, precision, possibly a key. Wolf's eyes stayed on me. And the dental tools, she said. A dental handpiece could shape it, I said. Rotary, fine. Careful work. She also said the person would arrange the bits where their hand expects them. Wolf's gaze sharpened. The drills. I spread my hands. That is the part that has been nagging me since Berin first told us. The drills were not stolen. They were shifted, aligned too neatly, like someone worked by habit. Wolf's lips pressed together. A man who enters a dental office at night and uses dental tools does not need to be a dentist, but he must be familiar with the tools, familiar enough to select the correct burrs, familiar enough to replace them in a precise order. I nodded. And the chair, adjustable, stable. You can set the height, lock it, lean back, put the work right under the lamp. You can sit there for hours without getting a cramp, working on something small, turning it, cutting it, testing it. It is perfect. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Perfect for a craftsman. Perfect for someone who wants to copy a key, I said, not a tooth. Wolf leaned back slightly, hands on the chair arms. The warm chair is explained, not by a ghost, but by occupation. Someone sat there, working. The running water sound was a diversion, perhaps to create uncertainty, perhaps to mask a different sound. Yes, Wolf replied. A rotary tool makes a distinct whine. In a quiet building it could be heard. But if you can produce a convincing rush in the walls, you can cover a great deal. I rubbed my forehead. So we have a man upstairs in the loft walking carefully. We have a building manager named Sallow who signs plumbing invoices. We have an assistant with access and a calm face. We have a dentist who refused to help with an insurance claim. Now he is dead by gas, Wolf said. We have a workshop. I stared. You think the dental office was being used as a workshop to make keys? To make keys, or to make something that requires a key's precision, Wolf said. And the killer knows the room by habit. I exhaled. Then Berin was not the target, he was the inconvenience. Wolf's eyes held mine. He was the witness who became alarmed. His presence threatened exposure. Therefore he had to be eliminated, and the elimination had to appear accidental. Gas, I said. Nitrous, sweet and wrong. Wolf nodded. A convenient instrument in a dental office. It requires no struggle, no noise, no blood. A man can be rendered helpless and left to die with the door locked. If a second person knows how to handle the tank and the mask, it is simple. I sat down, feeling the weight of it settle. So the chair was not warm because the dead man sat in it. It was warm because someone else did. Wolf's gaze went to the envelope with the cotton roll, and the cotton roll, scented with clove oil, placed as if to suggest dentistry theater. A man who can forge a key can also stage a room. I frowned. Why plant the cotton roll? To ensure you noticed, Wolf said. To tempt you into thinking the mystery was childish, even supernatural. Pipes that run without water, a warm chair, a ghost dentist. It distracts the mind from the practical, from the fact, I said slowly, that someone was using the office to make something, and wanted us to chase tricks instead of locks. Wolf's eyes glinted. Exactly. The phone rang, I answered, and it was Inspector Kramer, sounding as if his day was not improving. Goodwin, he growled. I got your lab report coming. I already have it, I said. Nickel, silver, precision work. Not dentistry. Someone used dental tools to shape metal. There was a pause. Then Kramer said, All right, that helps. Salo says he never touched no keys. Larkin says she never saw anyone. The loft guy says he rents space and keeps to himself. Everyone's innocent. It's a parade. Maybe you're looking at the wrong parade, I said. Who benefits from copied keys? Kramer snorted. Everyone who wants in. Then start with who had reason to be in, I said, and who had a reason to keep Berin quiet. Kramer grumbled something that would have embarrassed a sailor, then said, Wolf coming down to talk. He is always willing to talk, I told him. It's the walking that gets expensive. Kramer hung up. I looked at Wolf. They are circling. They will want a suspect. Wolf's expression was calm, but there was a hardness beneath it, the way there is hardness beneath good leather. They will have one, but not yet. First, we must know what key was copied and what door it opens. And how do we find that? I asked. Without trying every lock in the building like idiots. Wolf's mouth tightened. We do not try every lock. We identify the lock that matters. The murderer's enterprise requires access. The location is Riddle Street. The building includes a pawn shop, a law office, a loft, and a dental suite. One of these contains the objective. I thought of the light under the loft door, the measured footsteps, the clean stop of the pipe sound, the warm chair, the tray set like a stage. Someone had been crafting in that chair, steady hands under intimate lighting, making metal obey. The patient in the chair wasn't sick, I said. The patient was not a patient, I said. No, Wolf said. He was using the chair as a workbench. Chapter 6. The key that left shavings Wolf does not chase criminals. He arranges for criminals to come to him, like reluctant guests who discover too late that the invitation was not optional. When he does send me out, it is not because he enjoys my company less than usual. It is because he wants facts, and facts live outside his chair. Goodwin, you will go to the bank. I blinked. The bank, yes, Wolf said. Dr. Berin's death was staged as an accident that requires motive and opportunity. Motive suggests protection of an enterprise. The enterprise suggests access. The access suggests a key. The most profitable keys in a neighborhood like Riddle Street are not for front doors. I nodded slowly. Safe, deposit boxes. Wolf's eyes held mine. Exactly. You will speak to the manager of Dr. Berin's bank. If he refuses to speak, you will persuade him. Do not use threats. Use intelligence. That narrows my toolkit, I said. It improves it, Wolf replied. Then you will speak to a locksmith, not a man who sells padlocks from a cart, but a competent professional who understands duplication. I want to know what nickel silver suggests, and what kind of key could be made with dental tools. I stood. Anything else? Wolf's mouth tightened slightly. Yes, bring me certainty. That is Wolf's version of good luck. I started with the bank because the bank starts everything. It sits in the middle of the city, like a fat spider, patient and well fed. And if you want to know why people lie, you ask the place where they keep what they value. Dr. Hal Berin banked at a respectable midtown branch, the kind that smells of marble, ink, and cautious optimism. I introduced myself to the manager, a man named Alvin Rourke, who had a neatly trimmed mustache and the guarded eyes of someone who spends his days declining requests politely. At first, he was all regulation. I am sorry, Mr. Goodwin, Rourke said, hands folded on his desk as if he had filed them too. We cannot discuss client matters. I am not asking about his balance, I told him. I am asking about his key. He blinked just once. That was the crack. My condolences, I added softer. Dr. Berin is dead. The police are calling it an accident. Mr. Wolf believes it is murder. If he is correct, someone used your institution the way they used his office. As a tool, I am trying to identify what tool they wanted. Rourke's mouth tightened. I cannot comment. You can, I said. You simply prefer not to. There is a difference. He looked at me as if weighing whether I was a nuisance or a threat. I do not often look like a threat. I look like a man who might show up at your next meeting. If you prefer, you can tell your story to him in a room full of uniforms. Rourke exhaled. A small surrender. This is highly irregular. It is, I agreed. So is dying in your own office. He hesitated, then opened a drawer and produced a thin file, not the kind that holds money. The kind that holds problems. Dr. Berin maintained a safe deposit box, he said carefully. Box 31. What about the key? I asked. Rourke licked his lips, and I could almost see policy manuals arguing in his head. 2 keys exist, he said. One is held by the client. One is held by the bank. Both are required to open the box. A week ago, Dr. Berin reported his key misplaced. Misplaced, I repeated. Rourke nodded. He said it had been lost. He requested a lock change. That costs money, I said. Yes, Rourke replied. It also requires procedure. Dr. Berin scheduled an appointment for the change. Then, 2 days later, he called and said the key had been found. Found where? I asked. Rourke's gaze slid away. He did not say. Did you accept that? I asked. Or did you laugh quietly after he hung up? Rourke's cheeks colored. We accepted it. Clients misplace things and then locate them. Sure, I said. And honest men never sweat. Rourke's mouth tightened. He seemed unsettled. That was useful. Did anyone else access the box during the period the key was missing? Rourke shook his head. Number without his key, it cannot be opened. But someone could copy it while it was missing, I said. Rourke stiffened. That is not possible. Nothing is possible, I said, until it happens. And then it is history. He stared at me, then said, The key was not presented to us. The client simply stated it was found. Too clean, I said. Rourke frowned. What? To clean a story, I said. If you truly lose a safe deposit key, you do not find it quietly. You either discover it in your coat and feel foolish, or you discover it in a place that makes you feel afraid. Dr. Berin felt unsettled. Rourke swallowed. Yes. I closed my notebook. Thank you. You have been cooperative in a way that will look excellent in any report. He did not look pleased, but he did not object. My second stop was a locksmith Wolf had named from memory, which always annoys me because it reminds me he can store facts the way other men store grudges. The shop was on a side street, narrow, bright with hanging key blanks, and smelled of oil and metal. A bell tinkled when I entered, and a man behind the counter looked up with the calm suspicion of someone who has heard every story. His name was Ira Denby. He was in his 50s, sleeves rolled, hands stained with honest work. His eyes were sharp, but not curious. Locksmiths deal in secrets. Their job is to pretend they do not notice. I want information, I told him. Denby nodded. That's what everyone wants. They call it information when it's about locks. I'm not asking you to open anything, I said. I'm asking you to explain something. Nickel, silver filings, fine as pepper, produced in a dental office. That got his attention. Not much, but enough. A dental office, he said slowly. That's a new one. Dental tools, I said. Precision rotary. Someone used the chair as a workbench. Denby grunted. Clever. Stable chair, good light, hands-free. I can see it. What kind of key? I asked. Could be shaped that way. Denby reached under the counter and produced a few blank keys. He held them up like examples in a lesson. House keys, he said. Number 2 simple, car keys, depends, but most modern ones are a different game. Safe, deposit keys. Now, those are small, often nickel, silver, cut with fine grooves. Precise, you need the right blank and a careful hand. Not impossible with dental gear if you know what you're doing. Copying, I said. Denby nodded. Copying, you need the original. Even briefly, you trace it, impression it, measure it. Cut the duplicate. Cutting produces shavings. Fine, bright shavings, exactly like you described. I leaned on the counter, and if you didn't want shavings found. Denby's mouth curled a fraction. You clean up, you vacuum, or you rinse. Rinse, I repeated. Denby nodded. Metal dust clings. If you run water, you can wash it into a trap. If you don't have water, you make it look like you do. That phrase landed right on top of last night's memory, the pipes rushing confidently while the sink stayed dry. Make it look like you do, I said. Denby looked at me. You heard running water. Yes, I said, with the main valve shut. Denby's eyes narrowed. Then it wasn't building water. Could be a concealed pump, small electric pump with a reservoir. Pushes liquid through a line into the drain, makes the pipes talk. Masks other noise too. I stared. Like a motor. He nodded. Exactly. You run a pump, it makes a hum. But if you can get the pipe sound to carry, that's what people hear. They think plumbing. They don't think machinery. And the waste, I said. Goes into the trap, Denby replied. Where your fancy detective found it. I pulled my notebook closer and wrote fast. If someone installed a bypass line or a concealed line, how hard would that be? Denby shrugged. In an old building, not hard. Lots of voids. You can tuck tubing inside a wall. You can run it from upstairs to downstairs. If the building manager's in on it, it's easier. I thought of H. Sallow's signature on the plumbing invoice. Install additional line, test pressure. Would nickel silver be used for other things? I asked. Sure, Denby said. But in that setting, with that kind of dust, it's key work, or lock work, something meant to fit where it doesn't belong. I thanked him, left the shop, and took a cab back to West 35th, letting the city's midday noise scrub at my thoughts. The pieces were beginning to align, which is always satisfying until you remember aligned pieces usually point to a human being. Wolf was in his office, as expected, with the air of a man who had not moved all day and had still managed to make progress. Fritz had brought him beer, and the smell of cooking had begun to drift from the back, making the world briefly tolerable. I delivered my reports. Bank first, locksmith second. I kept it tight, because Wolf prefers facts served without garnish. When I told him about the safe deposit key misplaced and then found, Wolf's eyes narrowed. Too clean, he said, using my phrase without apology. When I told him Denby's conclusion, Wolf's expression settled into something like satisfaction, which on him looks like a man deciding not to crush an insect. Good, Wolf said. I blinked. Good that Berin's key was taken. Good that the mechanism is clarified, Wolf replied. A concealed pump, a reservoir tubing. The sound you heard was not water running. It was a device pushing liquid through pipes that should have been silent. It rinsed metal shavings away and created a convincing auditory mask. And the dental chair, I said. Workbench. Yes, Wolf said. The craftsman sat in that chair. He used the overhead lamp. He arranged the drills by habit. He cut metal, not enamel. Then he rinsed the shavings into the drain. The spittoon trap collected what his carelessness missed. I let out a breath. So, the water was cleanup. And camouflage, Wolf said. The killer anticipated observation. He provided a misleading explanation, a haunting, an absurdity. He wanted you, and Dr. Berin, to attribute the sounds to plumbing, not to industry. I thought about Berin, anxious and proud, refusing to help a scarred man commit insurance fraud, then finding his office turned into a stage for tricks. And when Berin got scared, I said, he tried to hire Wolf. That forced the issue. Wolf's eyes held mine. Exactly. The enterprise could not be exposed. Therefore, the witness had to be removed, and removed in a manner that discouraged inquiry. Gas, I said. Sweet and wrong. Wolf nodded. And the safe deposit key. The question now is not whether it was copied. It is what was in the box that justified murder. I frowned. Money, perhaps, Wolf said. But Riddle Street's most profitable commodity is not cash. It is leverage, documents, evidence. A record of someone's wrongdoing. The dead dentist may have placed something in that box, or someone else may have placed something there and feared he would access it. I stared at him. You think Berin's box might hold more than dental records? I think, Wolf said, that if a man reports his safe deposit key missing and then claims it is found, he has been pressured. Pressure implies threat. Threat implies a man with need. He reached for his phone and dialed, his fingers precise. Goodwin, call Inspector Kramer, and inform him that the safe deposit box at Dr. Berin's bank is relevant. He will obtain a warrant or whatever ritual comforts him. I picked up my phone, but I hesitated. Wolf, who had the access to install a pump line in the dental office. Wolf's eyes remained calm. A building manager, a maintenance contractor, a tenant above with time and concealment, an assistant with keys, any combination. Or all of them, I said. Wolf's mouth tightened slightly. Do not multiply conspirators without cause. One intelligent man can arrange much if others are careless. However, we will soon know more. How? I asked. Wolf's eyes glinted. Because the copied key will be used. It has already been used, or it will be used again. A man who makes a duplicate does not do so for art. He does so for entry, and entry leaves traces. Goodwin, not always shavings, but always consequence. I called Kramer, delivered the bank detail, and listened to his reaction evolve from irritation to the grudging alertness of a man who realizes the case has turned interesting. When I hung up, Wolf was watching me. Now, he said, we wait for the next note in the melody. The pianist cannot resist playing. I looked out the window at West 35th Street, where the city moved on as if it had no interest in dentists, keys, or murder. But the city always has interest. It simply expresses it later, in a quieter room, with a locked door and a warm chair. Chapter 7. The empty chair's real owner. The police love paper, because paper sits still and does not argue. Unfortunately for them, paper also lies with a straight face, which makes it useful to the wrong people. By late afternoon, Kramer had done what he calls cooperation, which is to say he had stopped trying to keep me out of the room and started trying to keep me in it. He could smell a case shifting from accident to headline. And he did not want Nero Wolfe to get there first without him. They had sealed Dr. Berin's office. They had photographed everything twice, once for evidence and once for reassurance. They had taken the nitrous tank and its lines. They had taken fingerprints that would probably include half the building's population and one cockroach with a record. What they had not taken, because it did not look dramatic enough, was Dr. Berin's patient ledger. I learned long ago that if you want to find the part of a story that hurts, look where the money should be and is not. Riddle Street runs on money the way a man runs on blood. When money is missing, the body starts to look pale. Kramer let me back into the office with Stebbins and one uniform, and he did it with the air of a man issuing a favor he expects to be repaid in gratitude. Don't touch anything you shouldn't, he said. That narrows my hobbies, I told him. He grunted, then stood in the hallway as if guarding his pride. Stebbins followed me into Berin's private office. The room still smelled faintly sweet, as if the gas had left its signature even after the windows were opened, and the world tried to pretend nothing happened. Berin's desk was neat, but it was a dentist's neat, the kind that is designed to keep fear organized. Files stacked, pens aligned, blotter centered. On the wall, the framed diploma hid the safe like a polite lie. I went straight to the cabinet behind the desk where Berin kept his ledgers. It was not a modern system. Berin had liked writing by hand, which told you something about him. Men who write by hand believe they can control the story. There were 2 large books, bound in black, labeled by year. I opened the most recent one and began flipping pages, names, dates, procedures, notes in a tight script. Stebbins stood behind me, watching as if I might steal a toothbrush. What are you looking for? He asked. A confession. I'll take one if it's in stock, I said. Mostly I'm looking for the thing that doesn't belong. That is the trick with ledgers. A normal business ledger is boring. You want boring. When it stops being boring, someone is using it. I scan for anything odd, long gaps, payments missing, notations that did not match the office's routine. Then, halfway through the month, I saw a name, Kaldorn. It was written in Berin's hand, not once but several times, always late in the day, always with the same note beside it. Late adjustments. No procedure code, no insurance carrier, no billing number, just the name, the time, and the phrase. I flipped back. Kaldorn appeared again 2 weeks earlier. Same note. Late adjustments. I flipped forward. He appeared again and again. Stebbins, I said. You ever hear of Kaldorn? He frowned. Number. Good, I said. That means we are not behind. I checked the adjacent columns where Berin normally recorded payment or insurance details. For Kaldorn, there was nothing, no checkmark, no notation, no paid, no bill sent. It was as if the man had been treated as a courtesy, or as if the treatment was not dentistry. I kept reading. I found other late appointments, but those had the ordinary scaffolding of real life, referrals, insurance, amounts, scribbled reminders. Kaldorn was a ghost with good handwriting. I closed the ledger, tucked it under my arm, and looked at Stebbins. This goes to Wolf, I said. Stebbins shifted. It's evidence. I'm not taking it home to read it in the bathtub, I said. Wolf will look at it and tell you what it means before you finish your next cigar. Stebbins hesitated, then muttered. Kramer won't like it. Kramer doesn't like weather, I told him. He survives anyway. I brought the ledger to the brownstone with Kramer's grudging permission and my promise that I would not alter it. It rode on the seat beside me like a quiet accusation. Back on West 35th, the house was in its usual composed state. The front room smelled faintly of Polish and coffee. Fritz's voice drifted from the kitchen, scolding a sauce the way other men scold unruly children. The city outside was still damp, traffic steady, horns impatient. Inside, the world was civilized. Wolf was in the office, cigar lit now, his expression calm in the way only a man can be calm when other people are doing the walking. I set the ledger on his desk. From the scene, I said, before Kramer decides it belongs in a vault for the next 6 months. Wolf's eyes went to it. Goodwin, you have a talent for extracting objects from hostile environments. I call it freelancing, I said. You pay better than the police. Wolf opened the ledger carefully, as if it were delicate. He began turning pages with thick fingers that looked wrong for fine work, and yet did everything he wanted them to do. I watched him read. Wolf reads the way a judge listens to testimony. He does not skim. He weighs. After a minute, he stopped. Kaldorn, he said. Yes, I replied. A name that shows up without a face. No insurance trail, no referral, no payment record, just recurring late adjustments in Berin's own hand. Wolf's eyes stayed on the page. How many times? 6, I said. In the last 2 months, always late, always adjustments, always no money. Wolf closed the ledger softly, as if ending a conversation he did not enjoy. A man who exists only on paper is often a mask. And masks usually hide money, I said. Wolf's eyes lifted to mine. Or hide identity. Kaldorn is not a patient. Kaldorn is a convenience. I pulled up my chair, meaning someone used the name so they could sit in that chair without being recorded as themselves. Wolf nodded once. A shadow with elbows. I blinked. That's poetic for you. It is accurate, Wolf said. The chair was used after hours. The drills were arranged by habit. The spittoon trap held metal filings. Someone was crafting, not being treated. A name appears in the ledger that is not connected to payment. Therefore, the ledger entry was not for accounting. It was for camouflage. I frowned. Why camouflage it at all? If you're sneaking in after hours, why bother writing your fake name into the book? Wolf's eyes narrowed slightly. Because routine protects. If Miss Larkin or anyone else saw a late entry, it would appear legitimate. It would suggest Dr. Berin had a patient, not an intruder. If questioned, Dr. Berin could say, "Yes, that is Cal Dawn, a difficult case." It provides an explanation without requiring detail. I thought about Berin, unsettled, proud, trying to keep his practice respectable while someone turned it into a workshop. So Berin cooperated, at least for a while. Wolf's mouth tightened. Cooperation is a spectrum. Perhaps he was coerced, perhaps he was paid, perhaps he was threatened. But he recorded the name. That means he permitted the fiction. I leaned forward. If Cal Dawn is a mask, we need to know who wore it. Wolf nodded. We will begin with the building. Mr. Sallow controls access. The loft occupant has proximity. Miss Larkin has keys and knowledge. Any of them could be Cal Dawn, or could have enabled Cal Dawn. I met Sallow, I said. He looks like a man who would sell his own shadow if it came with a receipt. Wolf did not smile. Do not let your wit replace your perception. A villain is not always obvious. Sometimes he is useful, and usefulness is his disguise. That made me think of the running water sound, of the clean-on, off timing, of the light under the loft door. Somebody had planned. Planning takes a kind of discipline that does not always come with a greasy collar. I said, "You want me to dig into Cal Dawn, find a trail, but not by searching for the name, which is likely false. You will search for the pattern." "Late," I said. "After hours," repeated. "Exactly," Wolf replied. "Find who was present in the building on those nights. Ask the pawn shop owner. Ask the law office. Ask the radio shop. Ask the manager. People remember patterns even when they forget faces." I nodded slowly, then said, "There's something else. If Cal Dawn was using the dental chair as a workbench, then the chair was the true property. Not Berin's, not Larkin's. It belonged to the man with the metal and the patience." Wolf's voice was quiet. "Yes, the chair was empty in the way a stage is empty after the actor exits." I looked at the ledger again. 6 appearances, always late, always unbilled. A phantom patient who never paid, never smiled, never complained, and left behind shavings. "Wolf," I said, "what do you think is in that safe deposit box?" Wolf's eyes drifted toward the framed diploma that hid his own office safe, as if safes were all part of the same family. "We will know soon. Inspector Kramer will obtain access, and the person who copied the key will attempt to use it again, either to retrieve something or to confirm it remains undisturbed. And when he does," I said, "we catch him." Wolf's gaze sharpened. "We identify him. Catching is Kramer's occupation. Understanding is mine." I stood up. The city outside kept moving. Inside, Wolf's office was closing in on an answer. "All right," I said. "I'll go back to Riddle Street and ask questions until someone answers." Wolf nodded. "Do so, and Goodwin." "Yes, do not sit in that chair." I stared at him. Wolf's eyes did not soften. "It has had enough occupants." Chapter 8. The man who borrowed the office Riddle Street in daylight is the same street as at midnight, only less polite about it. The rain stains show, the cracks show, and the people show, moving fast with their eyes half-turned, like they are always checking the mirror. Wolf had told me to find patterns, not names, because names can be rented. Patterns have to be lived in. So I went after the building's night routine, the quiet labor that keeps the place breathing after the tenants have stopped, pretending they are innocent. H. Sallow, the manager, was still hovering in the hall under police supervision, looking like a man who had learned to survive by being useful and forgetful, in equal measure. "Who does night maintenance?" I asked him. He tried to shrug it off. "Maintenance is my job." "Night," I said. "The man who empties trash and checks lights." His eyes slid away. "Louis Granger, part-time." "Where do I find him?" I asked. Sallow gave me a diner name on 9th. He said it too quickly, but the address was plausible, and I had learned long ago that even liars tell the truth when it saves them effort. The diner was hot, bright, and greasy, with coffee strong enough to make a man believe in miracles. Granger was at the counter, stocky, tired, and wearing a work jacket that had been washed too often to keep its pride. I took the stool beside him. "Louis Granger," he glanced at me. "Yeah, Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe." That name made him look again. The detective. The same I'm asking about lights in Dr. Berrin's office at night. Granger's mouth tightened. "Sometimes how?" I pressed. "Thin slits under the door." He admitted, "Not long. Like someone checked something and left." "You reported it," I said. He stared at his coffee. "Not my job." "It became your job when a man died," I said. "Did someone pay you to forget what you saw?" He went still. That pause was the kind that tells you a man has already answered, but hates the sound of it. Finally he said, "A guy talked to me." "What guy?" "No name," he said. Calm voice, not loud, like he didn't need to be. He had a briefcase, heavy, not papers, tools, I think. "When?" I asked. "Couple months back," he said. He asked what I saw. I told him, "Lights sometimes." He said, "It wasn't my concern." Then he paid me to forget. "How much?" I asked. He swallowed. "Enough. Cash," I said. He nodded once, ashamed and stubborn at the same time. I let him sit with it a moment, then asked, "Did you ever hear water running when it shouldn't?" Granger's head snapped toward me. "Yeah, late." Sound in the walls, steady like a faucet left open. Then it would stop clean. Clean, that word mattered. Pipes do not stop clean, unless someone tells them to. I paid for his coffee, left him with his fatigue and his guilt, and walked back out into the street with the pieces clicking together. Calm voice, heavy briefcase, lights in thin slits, running water that was not water. Now, I needed something that would tie the pipe trick to a purchase, something physical enough to carry into Wolfe's office and slap on his desk. A thief who wants quiet evidence buys from a place that asks no questions. Riddle Street has plenty of those. 2 blocks off the main drag I found a hardware shop with dusty shelves, bins of screws, and a clerk whose boredom could have been sold by the pound. I put a bill on the counter. "I'm looking for a receipt. Small aquarium pump and rubber tubing. Bought cash recent." He raised an eyebrow. "That's specific." "That's why I'm paying," I said. He hesitated, then went into the back. When he returned, he held a crumpled strip of paper like it was a favor he would regret. "Here," he said. "Pump tubing. Clamps. Cash no name." I read it. The date was 2 weeks before Berrin reported his safe deposit key, misplaced. The brand and model were the kind you use to move water quietly in a small system. The kind a man could hide in a wall cavity with a reservoir and a length of hose. "Do you remember who bought it?" I asked. The clerk shook his head. "Just a guy neat, calm, like he knew what he wanted." Calm again, I took the receipt, thanked him the way you thank a man who sells you a nail and accidentally sells you a motive, and headed back to West 35th. Wolfe listened without interruption, eyes half closed, cigar in hand, as if the case were a meal he intended to digest slowly. When I told him Granger's confession, Wolfe's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened at the phrase calm voice and heavy briefcase. When I handed him the hardware receipt, he studied it as if it were a calling card left by a man who believed he could not be traced. Wolfe's lips lifted, barely. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who has found the seam in a disguise. "A dentist leaves dental evidence," Wolfe said. "A thief leaves mechanical evidence." I nodded. So the pipes last night were a trick, not building water. A concealed pump pushing liquid through tubing into the drain. It rinsed shavings away and made a convincing rush in the walls. It also covered the sound of cutting. Wolfe's voice was calm. "Exactly. And now we have motive," I said. "Keys duplicated. Safe deposit boxes opened. Valuables moved like dust. Not grabbed in a panic, taken in silence." Wolfe's eyes held mine. "Yes. and the man who borrowed the dental office did not borrow it for dentistry. Chapter 9. The nitrous trick. By the time Wolf is ready to explain a death, he has already explained it to himself 3 different ways, rejected 2, and improved the 3rd until it fits the facts, the way a good glove fits a hand. What looks like inspiration is mostly discipline, and discipline is Wolf's favorite form of pleasure after orchids and dinner. That evening, with the rain returning to West 35th like a creditor, Wolf sat in his chair with the ledger open, the bank notes beside it, and my hardware receipt laid out as neatly as a warrant. Fritz had brought beer and then withdrawn, as if the air itself needed privacy. Wolf said, "Goodwin, Dr. Berin died from nitrous oxide. Inspector Kramer believes it was accidental because the instrument was ordinary." "Ordinary," I said, "that's what makes it sneaky." Wolf's eyes lifted. "It is not sneaky, it is convenient. Convenience is the murderer's friend." I leaned forward. "You're ready to reconstruct it?" Wolf's lips pressed together. "Yes, because the murder was not passionate. It was professional, it used what was available, and it relied upon what the victim assumed." I waited. Wolf does not like to be hurried. He believes time is a substance he owns. He began. Dr. Berin's office was being used as a workshop. The proof is simple. Metal shavings in the drain, drills arranged for repeated use, a pump and tubing to fake running water, and the false name Caldorn in the ledger to justify late access. "You think Berin allowed it?" I said. "At least for a while." Wolf nodded. "A man does not write a name repeatedly unless he has reason. That reason can be bribery, intimidation, or complicity. Regardless, he permitted the intrusion. The intruder, therefore, had time to learn the room, the chair, the lamps, the tray positions, the gas equipment. He used the room as a pianist uses keys. I could see it too clearly. A man in the chair after hours, lamp angled, bits arranged, metal blank held steady. The faint whine of a handpiece. Then the pump, pushing liquid so the pipes would sing and cover the sound, and washing the shavings down into the trap." Wolf continued. "At some point, Dr. Berin became alarmed. Either he realized he was being used, or he realized he could not control the situation he had tolerated." I said. "He reported his safe deposit key missing." "Yes," Wolf said. "That is a sign of pressure. He wanted the lock changed. Then he withdrew and claimed the key was found. He was unsettled, you were told. That implies coercion. A man with a duplicated key would not permit the lock to be changed. Therefore, Dr. Berin was made to desist." I frowned. "So he stopped trying to protect himself and hired you instead?" Wolf's eyes sharpened. "Exactly. Hiring me was the act that converted unease into danger. It meant he intended to end the arrangement. Either he planned to expose the thief, or he planned to renegotiate from a position of protection." "Greed," I said. Wolf's mouth tightened. "Do not moralize. Greed is common. Fear is common. Either could have motivated him. The result is the same. A witness cannot be tolerated." I shifted in my chair, and the witness could name tools, timing, and technique. He could describe the pump, the tubing, the late access, the metal work, and he could identify the arrangement of the instruments. A dentist knows his own drawers, as intimately as he knows his own hands. He would recognize which burrs were used, which were replaced, which were handled. I pictured Berin's face, practiced and controlled, turning uneasy when he realized his office had become someone else's place of work. A man who spends his life in control of other people's discomfort does not like losing control of his own environment, Wolf said. Therefore he was murdered. The murderer required a method that was quiet, plausible, and immediate. He also required a method that would not disturb the building, would not require violence, and would not leave traces that shouted. "Nitrous," I said. Wolf nodded. "Nitrous oxide is ideal in that setting. It is ordinary. It is available. It has an odor that can be mistaken for the office itself. And most importantly, it invites the word accident." I exhaled slowly. How did he do it? Wolf's gaze grew distant, not dreamy, but focused inward. Dr. Berin was later found slumped near the tank, exactly where the murderer had positioned the scene to resemble an accident. The door was locked from the inside. That detail is designed to close minds, but it can also be arranged. By what? I asked. A duplicate key. Wolf nodded once. Yes, a duplicate key to the suite allows entry and exit without forcing. A duplicate key to the private office allows the same. If the lock itself was not duplicated, it could have been manipulated. But the metal work strongly suggests duplication, I said, and the safe deposit key suggests the man is capable. Indeed, Wolf replied. Now consider the sequence. Dr. Berin closes at 6 and leaves. Later that night, he returns to his office, likely unsettled and intending to check something. There is no sign of forced entry, so he returned willingly, likely due to concern or suspicion. A man who wishes to murder with minimal struggle will control the victim's schedule. You think he was lured, I said. It is likely, Wolf answered, but not necessary. The murderer relied on Dr. Berin's habit of occasionally returning after hours, ensuring he would be alone. The key fact is that Dr. Berin returned that night, entered his office alone, and closed the door, placing himself exactly where the murderer needed him. That door being locked from the inside suggests either he locked it himself, or it was locked afterward in a manner that mimicked his act. I frowned. Could the door lock itself? Wolf dismissed it. Do not be childish. Locks are obedient. I waited. Wolf continued. The murderer then uses nitrous, not as a sudden blast, but as a controlled leak, a slight valve adjustment, a timed flow. He positions the mask or line so that the gas accumulates where Dr. Berin will inhale it. The victim does not perceive immediate danger because he is in his own domain, surrounded by familiar odors and equipment. And because nitrous doesn't feel like poison, I said. Correct, Wolf said. It feels like routine. That is the murderer's advantage. The victim may even believe he is managing the equipment, perhaps testing a line, perhaps checking a connection. A man in command often assumes his tools cannot betray him. I remembered the phrase from the headline, the kind that flatters the public's appetite for simplicity, accident. A man forgets his own tools can bite. Wolf's voice grew a shade harder. The killer does not need to overpower Dr. Berin. He needs only to let Dr. Berin breathe. The gas sedates, dulls, then incapacitates. At that point, the victim cannot react effectively. He becomes passive, and the gas continues. The murderer can then tidy. He can position the body. He can set the scene to suggest careless self-administration, I said. And then he locks the door from the inside. Wolf's eyes held mine. Or creates that appearance. That is a detail we will confirm, but the intent is obvious. A staged accident is a message to investigators. Do not look deeper. The victim did it to himself. A professional thief prefers that message because it keeps attention away from the real enterprise. I rubbed my jaw. The safe deposit boxes. Yes, Wolf said. A man who copies keys does not do it for novelty. He does it for access. Access to safe deposit boxes is lucrative, quiet, and slow. It permits theft in small increments. Valuables can be moved like dust, a document, a piece of jewelry, a bond, then nothing for weeks. The victim thinks he misplaced it, or he thinks time did it. And if the victim notices, I said, he tries to change the lock. Wolf nodded, and then he dies. The room felt colder, though the radiator was behaving. There was a quality to Wolf's logic that always made murder feel more intimate, not less. A gunshot is loud and crude. A valve turned a fraction is quiet and personal, I said. So Berin tried to end it, either by threat or by greed. He might have demanded more, or threatened to go to the police, or threatened to go to a man who can make police listen. Wolf's mouth tightened. He went to me. That was sufficient. I looked at the ledger again, Kaldorn's neat appearances. Then the killer was the night user, the real owner of the chair. Yes, Wolf said, and he is also the man who paid the maintenance worker to forget, and the man who acquired the pump and tubing, and the man who had enough mechanical confidence to install a concealed line. A calm voice, you were told. A heavy briefcase, tools. I nodded. He borrowed the office because it had everything he needed. Light, stability, dental handpiece, drawers of bits, a drain to wash evidence, and gas equipment to eliminate a witness. Wolf leaned back slightly. Professional equipment, Goodwin. Rarely objects to unprofessional use. It only waits. For a moment I thought of the chair on Riddle Street, empty now, waiting under its lamp as if it could not forget the weight of the man who had owned it for hours at a time. I said, "What do we do with this reconstruction?" Wolf's eyes glinted, and the lack of warmth in his expression returned. The kind that means someone else is about to have a very unpleasant evening. "We will present it," he said, "not as speculation but as inevitable sequence. We will assemble our principles in this office. We will offer them the pattern, and we will observe which of them cannot endure the sound of truth." "Kramer will love that," I said. Wolf's lips moved, almost a smile, but not quite. "Inspector Kramer loves results. He merely dislikes methods he did not invent." I stood, feeling the case tightening like a knot. So the trick wasn't the gas alone. The trick was making it look like the victim used it on himself. Wolf nodded. "Exactly. Berin died because he trusted the room he knew best. That was the killer's advantage." "Because," I said slowly, "it requires familiarity. You can't stage that unless you know the room." Wolf's eyes held mine, and we have already established that someone knew the room well enough to make it sing. Chapter 10. The riddle solved on Riddle Street. Wolf does not like Riddle Street, which is one of the reasons he solved the case on West 35th, and only borrowed the street long enough to make it confess. By noon Kramer had a warrant for Dr. Berin's safe deposit box, and by 1 he had the bank manager, Alvin Rourke, sweating in a room that smelled of marble and official worry. The box was opened with the bank's key and Berin's key, the original one that had been misplaced and found. Rourke watched the process, the way a man watches surgery performed on his own reputation. The contents were not dramatic. No bundles of cash, no jewels, no secret wills. What it held was more dangerous in the long run. A thick envelope of photocopied documents and a small notebook in Berin's hand, the pages filled with names and dates and brief notes that looked like dental reminders until Wolf read them and shook his head. "Not teeth," he said. "Timing." The photocopies were bank access logs and box numbers. 2 pages worth, enough to ruin a man who believed paper could be kept quiet. There was also a typed letter, unsigned, that read like a threat in a polite suit. The gist was simple. Dr. Berin had been told to mind his practice and mind his tongue, and he would be permitted to continue breathing. Kramer read it twice and glowered, as if the paper had insulted him personally. "That's motive," he said. Kramer's face tightened. "You got a name?" Wolf's eyes did not move. "I will have one. Profit requires a hand to take it." Wolf's trap had 2 parts, and neither required him to leave his chair. The first part was a decoy deposit box. Rourke, under pressure from Kramer and the promise of Wolf's displeasure, agreed to cooperate. He arranged a box in the same vault section as Dr. Berin's, one that looked tempting to anyone using copied keys and stolen box numbers. The box held nothing valuable, only a clean sheet of paper dusted with a powder that would mark fingers, and a tiny camera positioned to catch a face leaning in close. The second part was a rumor planted where thieves drink coffee. That was my department. I went back to 9th Avenue and slid into the diner booth where Louis Granger had sat 2 days earlier. Granger was not there, but a neighborhood like that has ears that pass gossip around the way children pass coals. I ordered coffee, ate half a slice of pie as camouflage, and talked to the waitress as if I were a man who liked to talk. People who work diners see everything. They also know that the best lies are almost true. I said, casually, that the bank had messed up and shifted some boxes after the dentist's death. I said the bank manager was nervous. I said there was a new box being used as temporary storage for papers. The kind of papers that could make a man rich or dead, depending on who held them. I said it loud enough for the man at the counter to hear, and loud enough for him to repeat it to the man who paid him to forget. By evening, the rumor had legs. By the next night, it walked. Kramer and 2 of his men were stationed in the bank vault area, out of sight, sweating in silence. Rourke stayed in his office upstairs pretending to be calm. Wolf stayed in his chair in the brownstone because he has a moral objection to waiting on other men's schedules. I stayed in the bank lobby, with a newspaper I did not read, watching the doors like a bored citizen. At 10:30, a man entered. He was small, lean, and dressed in a way that tried to look harmless. His hat was pulled low, his coat plain, and his eyes too active. He moved like a man who has learned not to linger in well-lit places. He did not go to the teller windows. He went to the side door that led to the safe deposit area, and he did it with enough familiarity to tell me he had done it before. I stood up, stretched as if tired, and drifted toward a column where I could see him without appearing interested. He spoke to a guard at the entrance, showed a paper, and the guard nodded, bored. The man slipped through. I let him go. The bank and the police had him now. 10 minutes later, the alarm was not an alarm at all. It was the simple sound of a scuffle, a chair scraping, and a muffled curse. Kramer's men were efficient when the room was small and the target was trapped. They brought him out in handcuffs, hat askew, eyes wide with indignation and fear. He looked like a man who had expected easy money and found a wall. Kramer saw me and jerked his head. "You know him, not personally," I said. "But I admire the confidence." The man snapped. "I didn't do nothing. I got the right. I got the key." "That's the part that interests us," I told him. His name was Ed Rusk. He was not clever enough to be the brain of anything, and he was not stupid enough to be innocent. He was a runner, the kind of man who carries packages and believes his danger is limited to his shoes at headquarters. Under Kramer's slow pressure and the simple fact of evidence, Rusk started talking. Not because he had a conscience, but because he had an instinct for survival. He said he had been paid to access boxes. He said he had been given numbers, told when to go, told what to look for. He said the keys came from someone else, always delivered in a plain envelope, always with instructions. He also said the work had been made in a dental office on Riddle Street, because the man who paid him had once laughed and said, "Better light than a locksmith shop." That was the phrase that made it all click for Kramer, because it was not a confession. It was a brag Kramer called me at the brownstone near midnight. "Goodwin," he growled. "We got a name. Miles Grent." I repeated it. "Miles Grent. Finance clerk," Kramer said. "Works at the bank. Back office. Access to box numbers. Access logs. Key blanks ordering codes. All of it. Clean hands, dirty mind. The punk says Grent ran the whole thing and used the dentist's office for copying." Wolf, listening from his chair, gave a small grunt that meant he had been waiting for Kramer to catch up. I asked, "And the murder?" Kramer's voice hardened. "The punk says Barron started asking questions, then started asking for money, bigger cut, or he'd go to the police. Then he hired Wolf. Grent panicked, used the nitrous, made it look like Barron did it to himself." Wolf spoke then, voice mild, but edged. "Inspector, bring Mr. Grent here." Kramer barked a short laugh. "You want me to deliver him to your living room?" "My office," Wolf corrected. "And yes, you will want what I can provide, a coherent conclusion. Tomorrow morning. But if this goes wrong, Wolf, I'll make you walk." Wolf hung up without answering, which is his way of saying the threat did not reach his altitude. The next morning, Wolf staged the room, the way he always does when he intends to end a case. The chairs were arranged. The desk was clear except for a few items he wanted visible, like props in a civilized play. Fritz served coffee with the solemnity of a priest, then withdrew. Kramer arrived first, red-faced and impatient, carrying Miles Grent in the company of 2 detectives. Grent was in his 30s, neatly dressed, hair combed, tie straight. He looked like a man who had built his life on appearing harmless. His eyes were calm, but his mouth was tight, as if he had not yet decided whether to be outraged or pleading. Ed Rusk came next, escorted and sulky, still believing he had been unlucky rather than foolish. Alvin Rourke, the bank manager, arrived, looking as if he wanted to be anywhere else, including in front of a firing squad, because at least that would be quick. Aish. Sallow arrived too, wringing his hands and trying to look like a man who had never met a bribe. Kaya Larkin came last. She was pale, composed, and furious, in the way a woman is furious when she realizes someone used her workplace as a stage and her employer as a victim. She sat straight, hands folded, eyes steady. Wolf looked at them all as if counting pieces on a board. He began without ceremony. Dr. Hal Berin was murdered, Wolf said. He was murdered because his office was being used as a workshop to duplicate keys for safe deposit boxes. He became a danger to that enterprise. Kramer grunted, but he did not interrupt. He wanted the end. Wolf went on. The evidence is simple. Metallic filings in the spittoon drain trap, nickel-silver, produced by precision cutting. Dental drills rearranged by a hand familiar with their placement. A concealed pump and tubing purchased to rinse shavings and to mask the sound of cutting by producing an imitation of running water in the pipes. Then fed through wall space, opened during plumbing work. Mr. Sallow arranged and was paid not to question. A false name, Cal Dawn, repeatedly entered in the ledger to justify late access, and a safe deposit key reported missing, then conveniently found, a story too neat to trust. Rourke shifted, face tight. Sallow swallowed. Kay Larkin did not move. Wolf turned his gaze to Miles Grent. Mr. Grent, Wolf said, you were employed as a finance clerk at the bank. You had access to box numbers and client information. You identified boxes likely to contain valuables that could be removed gradually. You arranged for keys to be duplicated using equipment and lighting superior to those found in most locksmith shops. You rented the loft above Dr. Berin's suite under the name Cal Dawn, watched the office from above, stored your pump and tubing there, and used the wall cavity as your route into the plumbing line. Grent's mouth opened. This is absurd. Wolf's voice stayed calm. It is accurate. You used the dental office because it provided stability, intimate lighting, and tools designed for fine rotary work. The chair was not warmed by mystery. It was warmed by use. Grent's eyes flicked, just once, toward Kay Larkin, then away. Wolf noticed. Wolf notices everything that matters. You relied on Mr. Rusk, Wolf continued. To access the vault in person, you did not risk your own presence in the safe deposit area more than necessary. You paid him to be your hands. Rusk spat. He paid good. Wolf ignored him. Dr. Berin either tolerated your intrusion under pressure or accepted compensation, but he eventually attempted to end it, he reported. His key missing, intending to change the lock, he was forced to withdraw that request. Then he hired me. That act threatened your enterprise. Grent's face reddened. You have no proof I ever entered that office. Wolf nodded slightly, as if granting a child a minor point. You entered it under the name Cal Dawn. Kay Larkin's eyes narrowed, but she kept still. Wolf said, Miss Larkin, Dr. Berin wrote that name. It was not your hand, it was his. Therefore he was providing cover for someone's presence. Mr. Grent needed cover. He needed routine. He needed a paper trail that appeared legitimate to a casual glance. Kay's voice was tight. Dr. Berin told me Cal Dawn was a difficult patient. Private. Wolf nodded. Yes, a shadow with elbows. Grent's calm began to crack. He leaned forward slightly. Even if keys were copied, that doesn't prove murder. Wolf's eyes hardened. It proves opportunity and motive. The murder itself was executed with the same practical intelligence. Nitrous oxide is ordinary, available, and explainable in a dental office. A slight valve adjustment, a timed leak, and a man is sedated without struggle. Dr. Berin believed he was in control because he was in his own office. Professional equipment can be misused as easily as anything else. Kramer shifted, impatient. All right, Wolf. Say it plain. How do you tie him to the gas? Wolf's gaze remained on Grent. Mr. Grent had practiced in that office. He knew the placement of the tank, the mask, the door lock. He knew how to stage a tidy accident, because staging was his habit. He staged the pipes. He staged the warm chair as a ghost story. He staged the ledger name. Finally, he staged death. Grant's jaw tightened. This is conjecture. Wolf's voice remained even. It is sequence. And now we have a final detail. He nodded at me. I produced a small envelope and placed it on Wolf's desk. From the decoy box, I said. Inside were fingerprints marked by the powder and a clear photograph taken from the concealed camera. The face in the photograph was Ed Rusk, grimacing at the moment of realization. Rusk cursed, Wolf said. Mr. Rusk was caught because he trusted the method. Methods create pride. Pride creates carelessness. Kramer leaned in, satisfied. We got Rusk already. Wolf's eyes did not leave Grant. Mr. Rusk is a tool. Mr. Grant is the hand, and Mr. Rusk, since the matter should be tidy, was also the scarred gentleman who approached Dr. Berin with the insurance lie. Grant sent him first as a test and later as a warning. Grant's composure finally failed in a small way. His eyes darted again toward the door, toward Kramer's men. He knew there was nowhere to go, but the body performs the gesture anyway, like a reflex. Wolf finished gently, almost conversational. The chair was empty because the patient was never a patient. Wolf said. He was a locksmith with better lighting. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Kramer exhaled hard, like a man releasing a burden he disliked carrying. All right, Grant, you're under arrest. Grant's mouth worked. He tried to speak, but the words did not arrive in order. The men took him by the arms and lifted him from the chair. Kai Larkin sat still, eyes fixed ahead. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. Dr. Berin didn't deserve that. No, Wolf said, and for once his tone held something near simple human regret. He deserved to be wiser. Rourke looked sick. Sallow looked as if he wanted to vanish into his own maintenance closet. He had sold access, signed the plumbing work, and taken money to keep his mouth shut. But the murder had never been his courage. Rusk looked furious at the world for treating him like the small man he was. When they were gone, the office felt quiet again, civilized again, as if it had never held murder and theft and fear. I looked at Wolf. So Kaldorn was Grant's mask. Yes, Wolf said. And the warm chair, I said. Wolf's eyes drifted to his own chair, as if chairs were a topic that deserved respect. Warmth is not mystery, Goodwin. It is evidence of occupation. Fritz appeared at the doorway, silent and composed, like a man who has been waiting patiently for the world to stop misbehaving. Lunch is ready, he said. Wolf rose with deliberate dignity, as if closing the case had been a minor nuisance before the important business of eating. As we moved toward the dining room, I thought of Riddle Street, of its damp bricks and its thin slits of light under doors, of pipes that whispered without water. The riddle was solved, and the chair finally was just a chair again.